In 2007, thank you very much. In 2007, at the Clinton Global Initiative, Peter Diamandis and others with him announced what has become the world-famous X Prize. Peter's the chairman and CEO of X Prize. It's known for the $10 million Ansari X Prize for private space flight and the $10 million Progressive Automotive X Prize for 100-mile-per-gallon equivalent vehicles. He's also become a leader in commercial space travel, and he's a co-founder and chairman of the Singularity University, a Silicon Valley-based institution that has partnered with NASA, from whom we'll hear more in a minute, Google, Autodesk, and Nokia. Most importantly, for our purposes here, with all the trouble in the world, he is the author. I love to flack other people's books. He is the author of this book with his co-author, Stephen Kotler. It's called Abundance. And he explains in this book why, if we can unleash enough human power to match our technological capacity, the 21st century will be a time of more shared prosperity and more good news than bad news stories. So please welcome him to the stage, Peter Diamandis. So why are you so optimistic about the future? Don't you read the papers?
I try not to. I'm optimistic about the future by looking at the numbers. And if you look at the last century, the numbers tell a great story. Over the last 100 years, we've seen the cost of food drop 13-fold, energy drop 20-fold, transportation 100-fold, communication 1,000-fold. Steven Pinker at Harvard just wrote this book, The Better Angels of Our Nature, that shows that we're living during the most peaceful time ever in human history. When you look at all of human history, it's just that we pay 10 times more attention to the negative news than the positive news, and goodness knows there's lots of negative news out there. But the numbers show us that, in fact, technology is that force which takes what used to be scarce and makes it abundant. And so, a Maasai warrior in the middle of Kenya today on a smartphone has more access to knowledge and information than you had when you were the president 20 years ago. And it's extraordinary.
That's a frightening thought.
The most amazing thing is that smartphone on Google for that teenager in a sub-Saharan African country is the same as Google for Eric Schmidt. There's this democratization where things become, basically available to everybody. And we project, and the work we're doing at the X Prize, is how can we do that with literacy? How can we do that with health? How can we use technology to create a scale that allows every child to have the best possible education, the best possible health care, independent of where they live or where they were born?
I want you to talk about that a little bit. Everybody knows about the Space X Prize and the 100-mile-a-gallon vehicle X Prize. You have proposed now to get into social policy to make benefits more widely shared and to create an era of more shared prosperity. So tell us how you're going to do that. How are you going to design this prize? How are you going to decide who wins? How are you going to help implement it?
Sure. So I'm very proud. It was this week at the United Nations and the Social Good Summit that we announced a $15 million prize called the Global Learning X Prize. A number of amazing benefactors, including Strive, who's here from Econet, put up the capital. And we are challenging teams around the world to build a piece of software, not a hardware prize. The cost of hardware is plummeting. A piece of software that can take a child anywhere who's illiterate to basic reading, writing, and numeracy in 18 months. So there's nearly 1 billion illiterate people. 2/3 of those are women. 250 million are kids. And the notion is that technology is progressing at such a rate that we have the ability to have, the same way Google democratizes access to information, to democratize access to the best teachers. Imagine an AI, or imagine a piece of software that knows a child's favorite color, sports, actors, presidents, and can literally give them a personalized education. That's the vision we believe in, and we expect to have hundreds or thousands of teams compete. We're going to then take the top 5 pieces of software, deploy it to 5,000 kids throughout Africa, and test and see what the best one is, and then open source the software with the vision that any Android tablet or phone made in the future will have the software on it from the start.
So I think you should say just a little more about that, because one of the things that's always impressed me about what you've tried to do with technology is you think that whatever breakthrough there is should be immediately open sourced, don't you? And virtually everything.
Well, I think we're heading towards a time when the rate of change is going so fast. The intellectual property system is going to have a hard time keeping up, especially as AI comes on, as 3D printing comes on, as these technologies come on. So we're starting to see a move towards open source. Elon Musk just open sourced much of Tesla's activities. We're going to be opening sourcing the winning of this. And it's a notion of uplifting humanity, because a populace that is more literate, has better health, is a more peaceful, prosperous, and less populous population.
In this book, you got a whole chapter on the do-it-yourself economy.
Yeah.
Tell the people here why you think it is practical to believe, since throughout history, except for farmers, most everybody who's worked has worked for somebody else and not for themselves. Why you think that a much more significant number of people will be able to support themselves with their own economic entrepreneurialism in the future than they do today? Because it's a huge issue given the level of structural unemployment across the globe.
So I think there's a lot of changes coming along that line. And what I want to remind people is that in 2010, we had about 1.8 billion people connected online. That number by 2020 is going to about 5 billion at least, if Google and Facebook have their way, and maybe 7 billion people connected. And that's 3 billion new minds entering the global economy, 3 billion new contributors, creators, trillions of dollars flowing into the economy no one's speaking about. And those individuals, no matter where they are on the planet, now have access to Google, they have access to AI, 3D printing on the cloud, they have access to extraordinary technologies. They also have access to crowdfunding. There'll be $15 billion in crowdfunding by 2015, $100 billion by 2020. So they have access to capital, crowdsourcing, and we're now empowered to become entrepreneurs. And I teach this, that the world's biggest problems are the world's biggest opportunities. The best way for an entrepreneur to want to become a billionaire is help a billion people. This kind of beautiful parity exists right now, and a lot of the young people in the developing world are entrepreneurs to exist. And now we're giving them the tools to up their game.
I got to ask you at least one more question about this. Assuming all this can happen, from early childhood education through access to the internet to a do-it-yourself economy, the number of really poor kids in the world, the largest number of which live in India now, we have found in our work against AIDS, TB, malaria, and waterborne diseases, have trouble even having the recommended medicine adhere to their bodies because of nutritional stunting. So how are we going to feed all these people? And how are we going to feed all these people without making climate change much, much worse than it already is?
So again, I try and put forward what I believe is techno-realism versus techno-optimism. But my colleague, my business partner, Craig Venter, we are literally beginning to harness a new programming language of DNA. We're going from evolution by natural selection, Darwinism, to evolution by intelligent direction, and the ability to begin to, through using genomics, to understand how to make food that is perhaps more salt resistant or able to grow quicker or grow in higher cycles. Some of Craig's work has increased photosynthetic efficiency some 300%. That's part of it. The other part is we are truly living in a world of abundant energy. It's just not in a usable form yet. The Earth gets 5,000 times more energy from the sun than we use as a species in a year. If you talk to folks like Elon Musk and Ray Kurzweil, who believe we'll reach 50 to 100% energy from the sun in the United States in the last 20 years. And the poorest parts of the world are the sunniest parts of the world. So I think we're heading towards a solar revolution. And if you have abundant energy, you also have abundant clean water. And as you know well, sir, half the disease burden on Earth is due to unclean drinking water. We live on a water planet. It's what Carl Sagan called it, the pale blue dot, because it's blue from that. The question is, how do we take that water and make it available? And so these are things that are in process. It's in the lab, coming to market, and I think we're heading towards a much more rapid period of time of innovation. I think we've touched 1% of the innovation rate we'll see in 10 years.
Just say a couple of words so people will feel optimistic about this, about how much more efficient we could be in the use of water for agriculture, because water usage is a huge problem, especially where livestock's involved, but also just in bringing in crops the way we do it today. And I was really impressed with what you said about aquaculture and about vertical farming, growing food basically in multi-story urban buildings more efficiently than you can farm it on acres.
Yeah,
I'd never thought about it, I confess, before I read the book.
I mean, we're talking about doing an X Prize in vertical farming. The notion that we can, in fact, in a downtown New York or downtown Dallas or LA, have a building that is able to capture the sun, is able to finely tune the pH of the water, is able to grow 24 hours a day and provide the ideal growing economy. When we go have a beautiful meal here in Manhattan, the average distance that your meal, it's Chilean sea bass, it's red wine from Italy, whatever it is, it's like 1,600 miles. Imagine if the food could be grown right then. LA would starve, I think it's 3 days if we shut down transportation. So it's about distributing food production.
Go figure. I think it's right. You'll be very persuaded. This agricultural chapter may be the most interesting chapter in the book, at least maybe because I grew up in a farming place. So the bottom line is, you think we can handle 9 million people without burning up the planet, and you think we can feed children well enough so that they can learn, and you believe that through technology widely disseminated, we can not only educate people, we can empower them to create enough income-generating activity themselves that we can essentially have a very low structural unemployment level in every country.
I believe that the intelligence and the tools to solve these grand challenges are there. I mean, the whole ethos of X Prize is to set a goal and to say, I don't care where you went to school, what you've ever done before, if you solve this problem, you win and we all win. And so it's about incentivized competitions, about incentivizing entrepreneurs, whether they're from Mumbai or the Bronx, to do that. And those entrepreneurs now have the tools that only the largest governments and corporations had just a few decades ago. It's now in the hands of all of us. And that's what gives me the greatest hope.
I want to read you a phrase from this book. Over the years, I've been lucky enough to hold many similar meetings, like this one and the ones he's talking about. And what seems to unify all these people is what's on display today. That would be you. A high level of optimism, a magnanimous fear of caring, and a hearty appetite for the big and bold. He says if we keep that, we're going to be just fine. Let's give him a big hand.
Thank you, sir. An honor and a pleasure. Thank you.